She was the most photographed woman of the 1960s. Brigitte Bardot had the world at her feet. But today, she's living in near isolation, forgotten by the very world that once adored her. How did one of the most iconic women in pop culture go from global obsession to near invisibility? In this video, we uncover Bardot's meteoric rise, her sudden retreat from fame, the controversial turns in her later life, and why so many now choose to forget her. Chapter 1. Early Life. On September 28, 1934, Brigitte Anne-Marie Bardot was born in Paris, France, in a wealthy family. Her father, Louis Bardot, was a successful industrialist, while her mother, Anne-Marie, belonged to a strict Catholic lineage. Brigitte's life was governed by a firmly established framework of expectations, which also shaped her upbringing. Brigitte was raised to be prim, poised, and perfect. But even as a young girl, Brigitte showed signs that this wasn't what she wanted. Her childhood contained many heartbreaking stories that shaped her in her later years. When Bardot was 5, Nazi Germany occupied France, and life in the city changed dramatically. Though she came from a wealthy family, no one was untouched. There were curfews, food shortages, blackouts, bomb drills, German soldiers in the streets, and a constant sense of fear. Her family tried to shield her from the chaos, but the fear and restriction shaped her deeply. At age 7, Bardot began taking ballet lessons at the prestigious Conservatoire de Paris during wartime. But for Bardot, ballet was more than obedience. It became one of the only places where she felt free. But her escape didn't last long. She once recalled feeling like a doll who was trained to spin, smile, and obey. She later started training with legendary Russian choreographer Boris Knyazev. Brigitte Bardot didn't grow up loved. She grew up being watched, molded, and silenced. Brigitte described her childhood as a golden cage, beautiful from the outside but emotionally stifling on the inside. Even Brigitte's friendships were curated. Her parents chose which kids she could play with, filtering her world through their lens. She was never truly free to connect, explore, or simply be a child. Bardot later opened up about how she was emotionally neglected and at times physically punished. The pressure to perform, behave, and conform created an internal storm. Adding to her sense of isolation was a lazy eye that made her feel like an outsider. She once admitted she felt like an ugly duckling, especially next to her younger sister, Mijanou, who was graceful, intelligent, and obedient. In contrast, Brigitte felt like the flawed one, the girl who couldn't quite fit into the mold, constantly self-conscious and burdened by a sadness she couldn't name. My mother wanted a porcelain doll. I wanted to break windows and dance in the rain. She recalled suffering from intense feelings of isolation as a child. She once confided in an interview, "I felt like I didn't belong. Not in my family, not in the world. There was always a sadness inside me that I couldn't name." Her early years of trauma became even worse during her teenage years. There was a rigid, unyielding order to her life, which included severe rules concerning her attire, socializing, schooling, and a host of other spheres of her life. Her parents, as it has now come to light, were overbearing and even found ways of not allowing her to smile in photos since they deemed it vulgar. During this period, she would spend hours sobbing, locked away in her room. No one saw my tears because no one wanted to see. These oppressive childhood experiences were the primary reasons for the emotional breakdowns she faced as an adult. In an interview in April 1958, she reflected on her early dreams. "I wanted to be a dancer, not an actress. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. The spotlight found her before she was ready, and once it did, it devoured the girl she had been." Brigitte Bardot would no longer belong to herself. She would belong to the world. For a girl who was constantly told to be silent, still, and obedient, the lens of a camera felt oddly liberating. At age 12, a family friend, impressed by Brigitte's blooming beauty, suggested she pose for a fashion magazine. Her mother agreed, thinking it was a harmless diversion. What began as a one-time photo session soon turned into something else entirely. Agents took notice. So did filmmakers. Brigitte, still a child, found herself in the spotlight, not fully understanding what it meant. But for Bardot, modeling wasn't about fame. Not yet. It was a sliver of independence. A place where, for the first time, she could express herself without being corrected. The world fell in love with her face long before they ever heard her voice. Chapter 2. Career. In 1949, a photo of Bardot was published in Elle magazine. She was just 15. It wasn't just a photograph, it was an ignition. The image caught the eye of director and screenwriter Roger Vadim, whom she would later marry. He was captivated by her beauty, but even more so by the raw, unrefined energy she radiated. That one photograph sparked a transformation. Bardot went from a dancer to a model, and then quickly to the silver screen. By 1952, at just 18, she made her film debut in Le Trou Normand. But it wasn't until Vadim cast her in the scandalous 1956 film And God Created Woman that Bardot exploded into global stardom. Her portrayal of Juliet in the movie, a sexually liberated woman in a conservative society, shattered norms. Bardot became a sensation, a fantasy, and a threat. She wasn't just acting, she was embodying the sexual revolution before it even had a name. The character of Juliet shocked moralists and delighted critics. The French Riviera, sun-soaked and sultry, was the perfect backdrop for Bardot's transformation into an icon. Her scenes in revealing outfits, dancing barefoot on tables, and challenging male authority made her both a cultural lightning rod and a liberation figure. But the film's success also came at a price. The intense spotlight created an avalanche of criticism and judgment. Paparazzi hounded her every move. Her sexuality was fetishized and condemned in equal measure. Men adored her, women envied her, and the media dissected her. She became an international symbol almost overnight. American audiences were simultaneously enthralled and scandalized. The Catholic Church denounced her. Governments debated banning her films. Yet, the more she was condemned, the more people watched. Off-screen, she was increasingly uncomfortable with the fame. She found herself battling anxiety, panic attacks, and even suicidal thoughts. It was like being naked in front of the world with nowhere to hide, she later confessed. Worse, the overwhelming sexualization from a young age made her question her self-worth. "No one wanted to know what I thought, only what I looked like," she once said. The pressure to always appear beautiful, desired, and enigmatic was suffocating. As her star rose, her mental health quietly deteriorated. She began to self-isolate, struggling with what she described as the prison of perfection. Her fame grew, but so did the internal wounds. The late 50s and 60s weren't just Bardot's prime, they were her reign. She wasn't merely a movie star, she was a living symbol of disruption. Feminine power redefined. With her messy blonde hair, pouty lips, and rebellious gaze, Bardot became the very symbol of feminine liberation. No other woman of her time commanded such fascination, such fixation. She was magnetic and dangerous, innocent and provocative all at once. She appeared in over 40 films, including La Vérité, The Night Heaven Fell, Contempt, Shalako, The Truth, and Viva Maria. Each performance layered her mythos. Directors praised her instinctual style, natural, raw, and emotionally charged. She could shift from vulnerable to volcanic in a single scene. Her screen presence was phenomenal. In Contempt, 1963, directed by Jean-Luc Godard, Bardot's role was haunting, a woman caught in the quiet collapse of a marriage. Critics loved it as her most sophisticated performance. She was no longer just a muse, she was a serious actress, though the world rarely acknowledged it. Her appeal was electric. The Beatles referenced her, Pablo Picasso painted her, Bob Dylan wrote songs for her. Women copied. Her look, a spontaneous blend of sensuality and carelessness, defined an era. The messy bun, the cat-eye makeup, the Bardot neckline, a wide scoop exposing both shoulders, became a fashion staple across Europe. She wasn't just setting trends, she was shifting archetypes. Designers scrambled to replicate her iconic image. But while the world celebrated her, Bardot began to feel the weight of it. "I was a monument when I wanted to be a woman." While Bardot helped usher in a new era of sexual and cultural freedom, she remained shackled. Liberation was her image, but not her reality. She had given the world a new kind of woman. Bold, beautiful, boundary-breaking. But in private, she was quietly crumbling under the pressure of being everyone's idea of Brigitte Bardot. By the early 1960s, Brigitte Bardot was more than just an actress. She was an icon, a phenomenon, a cultural earthquake, an influence beyond just cinema, but also in art, fashion, and politics. The world was infatuated with Bardot. Magazine covers, endless premieres, obsessive fans. But beneath the glamour, cracks began to show. The world's obsession became Bardot's burden. "I was admired by millions," she said, "but I couldn't breathe." The constant glare of the paparazzi, the endless demands for interviews and appearances turned her life into a cage. She grew increasingly volatile. Her relationships fell apart, and she had no privacy. Her reputation became more myth than person. Her films, though commercially successful, began to reflect her inner storm. She starred in multiple film genres. From drama to comedy to musicals, she proved the critics she had it all. Her 1965 film Viva Maria was a box office hit, but regardless of all the success, she was never quite at ease. She later said, "I smiled, but I was crying inside." As the sexual revolution gained more popularity, Bardot became both its representation and casualty. She was hailed as a female icon while being exploited by men. Her body was adored, dissected, and commodified, but few ever asked how she felt. As for Bardot, her charm was not aligned with traditional beauty. It wasn't that she played soulless maidens, she portrayed fully fleshed women teeming with rage, longing, and strength. Far from being passive, journalists created the term sex kitten in a crude effort to define her feral allure, which Bardot herself said was beside the point. In 1958, she shrugged off and adopted the image, but also contested it on her terms. "I liked it when they referred to me as a sex kitten. I thought it was cute and it didn't upset me." In 1963, she starred in Contempt by Jean-Luc Godard, a film that remains one of her most critically acclaimed. But even after achieving everything in life, Bardot began to question it all: the attention, the fame, and especially the harsh criticism. By the end of the decade, Brigitte started to unravel. Fame had become her biggest enemy. "Everyone loved Brigitte Bardot," she said, "but no one loved me. I no longer wanted to be a woman used by the cinema. I wanted to live in peace, away from judgment, away from the eyes," she said in a rare interview. She became a goddess in the eyes of the world, but in her silence, we saw the price of iconography. Chapter 3: Personal Life. The world saw glamour. But behind Brigitte Bardot's dazzling smile was a woman quietly unraveling. Bardot's personal life was as public as her films. Some might even argue her personal life is what made her so captivating. People couldn't look away from the wreckage of her private life, the heartbreaks, the controversies, which made her so intriguing. At just 18, she married director Roger Vadim, who was 26 at the time. Her parents deeply opposed the marriage, especially her mother, who saw Vadim as a womanizer. Bardot dropped out of her prestigious ballet school and attempted suicide when her parents didn't comply. Despite all the chaos, they got married in 1952. The marriage was riddled with scandals. While Vadim may have helped launch her film career, behind closed doors, he was controlling and, at times, abusive. Bardot later spoke of the power imbalance, of feeling trapped in a relationship where her body was valued more than her voice. The marriage only lasted 5 years. She would go on to marry 3 more times to Jacques Charrier, an actor who's also the father of her only child, Nicholas, Günter Sachs, a German multimillionaire, and her current husband, Bernard Dormal, a right-wing political advisor. By her mid-30s, Bardot had attempted suicide 4 times. The pressures of fame, the emotional torment of failed relationships, and the relentless media circus had pushed her to the edge. She once said, "Fame is nothing if it makes you want to die." The media followed her relentlessly, often reducing her partners to just a remark. The headlines were brutal. It went so far that the paparazzi would often climb trees just to catch a glimpse. And so she began to withdraw, not just from cinema, but from the world. Chapter 4: Away from the Spotlight. By the late 60s, Bardot began distancing herself from the media. The face of freedom, beauty, and rebellion began to disappear. She saw herself reduced to an image, a commodity. No one appreciated her talent. They only cared about her image, her body, her face, and her break. The industry wanted Brigitte Bardot the myth, not Brigitte the person. "I am not a woman. I am a symbol," she once said, "and symbols don't get to live." In 1973, she did the unimaginable. She walked away. "I am not proud of what I was. I am proud of what I am," she reflected years later. Bardot shocked the world by retiring at the peak of her fame. No final film, no statement, not a farewell tour, nothing. She simply vanished. After her retirement, Bardot reinvented herself. She had finally found her purpose, not in the camera flashes and headlines, but as a voice for the innocent animals who couldn't speak. And this time, no man, no director, no critic could rewrite her role. Chapter 5: Reinvention. She was once the most desired woman in the world. Now she lives in near total silence. No longer a sex symbol, Brigitte Bardot became a warrior for animals. In 1986, she founded the Brigitte Bardot Foundation, donating most of her fortune to fight animal testing, fur farms, and the Canadian seal hunt. Animals never betrayed me. Humans did. These weren't lines from a script. They were the raw truth of a woman who had turned her back on fame to speak for the voiceless. But activism brought new controversy. Her outspoken views on immigration and Islam ignited public outrage. She was fined 5 times for inciting racial hatred and never apologized. "I am French. I speak for France. I will not be silenced." Once a symbol of freedom, Bardot was now branded a bigot. The world that once adored her distanced itself. Occasionally, her name resurfaces. A legal battle, an old photo, a film tribute, but mostly she is a memory. They remember the body, they forget the soul. Today, Bardot lives in isolation in Saint-Tropez, surrounded by animals and far from the spotlight. She rarely speaks, except to defend animals or French heritage. She refuses contact with her son. The wounds of motherhood, fame, and betrayal never healed. "I don't miss anything," she said. "I had everything and it nearly killed me." Bardot remains a paradox. She saved animals but hurt people. She rejected fame yet stayed defiant. A feminist icon to some, a cautionary tale to others. She no longer graces red carpets, but her impact lingers in how women are seen, how desire is expressed, and how fame can both elevate and destroy. If you liked this video, make sure to watch the other videos in our channel about beautiful ladies of yesteryear.